Welcome to Exception Seekers, the show where we challenge conventional views on youth mental health and explore stories and experiences that offer alternative perspectives. Today, I am joined by Olivia Scobie, a social worker from Toronto who is currently completing her PhD in health policy and equity. Olivia is a force to be reckoned with in the field of perinatal mental health. She is the co-founder and executive director at Canadian Perinatal Mental Health Trainings and co-leads the psychotherapy placement program at Perinatal Wellbeing Ontario. She is also the author of the book Impossible Parenting, Creating a New Culture of Mental Health for Parents. And I am so thrilled to welcome her today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really fun that we were recording this in person.
I know. It's really nice to have you sitting at the kitchen table having a little conversation.
It's just so casual.
Love it. And you've been up in Parry Sound.
Yes, it's true. I am. I'm up in Parry Sound and enjoying the water and enjoying outside. I've been going outside. This is not on brand for me, but it's on brand for me in Parry Sound.
There you go. It fits the Parry Sound lifestyle to get out on the trail and be outside. So yes,
right.
Welcome.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
So thinking about what we would want to talk about today, because I know you do so many different things. Like you wrote a book, you have a clinical practice, you are heavily involved in a lot of research right now, Canadian Perinatal Mental Health Trainings as an organization. You wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
Yes.
I often joke that despite having a sub specialty in burnout, clinical burnout, I do wear a lot of different hats, all in the world of reproductive perinatal mental health. And I've been in this world now for, I'm gonna make myself sound really old. I guess it's been at least 15 years.
Wow,
Maybe
really?
more. I was trying to trace it back. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, about 15 years.
Yeah, that's a really long time.
It's a really long time.
Yes. Yeah. No, because you started so young. That's all it is.
I know.
That's all it is. So within all your hats, what is sort of taking your focus right now? What are the big pieces or the hats that you're wearing most often?
I think that the hat I'm supposed to be wearing most often right now is related to my dissertation. I'm finishing my PhD. I'm in my last year. I'm doing, this always sounds so fancy, data collection, just meaning I'm doing my interviews and coding all of the information that I'm getting. And my research is around 2S LGBTQ plus reproductive trauma and policy, which sounds boring. It sounds boring, but hear me out. Looking at the relationship between how we shape our healthcare systems and develop our policies and programs to support parents in terms of birth and reproduction, and sometimes not support parents in terms of birth and reproduction. I'm not somebody who believes that all birth trauma is avoidable. Sometimes that is unfortunately part of our experience. And so how do we support people after the fact rather than just saying, all the best,
Right.
Ideally, at least healthy parent, healthy baby, but not always.
Yes.
And so I'm into that right now. Been doing a lot of thinking about, just the relationship between how we, what we do from a macro level in terms of how we conceptualize taking care of reproductive bodies or not taking care of reproductive bodies, which seems to be one of the themes.
Yes,
in the early data.
Yes, okay. Which does sound interesting. So if someone has maybe never thought about this before, when you say 2S LGBTQ people and their experience of birth and reproductive trauma, what does that look like if this is a new thing that we haven't considered?
Yeah, and actually we've never asked queer, bisexual, lesbian, trans, non-binary people. We actually have never asked them before about in a qualitative way about their experiences with reproductive trauma. We've asked them about perinatal mood and other aspects related to reproduction. And so this is the first time that we've been what was that like for you?
Right.
How do you feel about that?
From like right from wanting to conceive, like all the way through,
Yes.
yes, whatever that looks like.
And so what's been really interesting
Mm,
so far is that birth trauma gets the most attention. It's kind of like the it girl in the
okay.
birth and reproductive trauma space for lots of good reasons. It's a pretty intense experience. Even
And
like those,
birth trauma specifically being the experience of delivery.
yes. And so when I think about reproductive trauma, I think about it on a spectrum from
Mhm,
fertility, pregnancy, like having hyperemesis or having a lot of pain or having a really scary pregnancy,
mhm,
and then what happens at the birth and sort of immediate postpartum, and then what happens afterwards in terms of prolonged NICU stays and having
mhm.
really scary experiences or having a lot of injuries afterwards. And so I think of it
Okay.
all along that continuum, or even like nursing or feeding trauma. I
Mhm,
know with my second, he was really jaundiced and had to be admitted to the NICU for a bit to make sure that he was getting enough to eat, and like just even the legacy of like all the
yes.
tracking I did for even now, and he's almost 17, like
Right.
just watching his food intake to be like, is he getting enough? He's fine, he's getting enough.
Yes, yes.
um
But the lasting impact.
17 years later, I'm still
Yeah.
like, are you eating enough? Just from that fear of like, oh, this poor baby.
Yes.
But one of the things that's sort of interesting in the early data analysis is that for a lot of queer parents who had reproductive trauma, it's sometimes the birth went pretty smoothly. But so much is coming out around fertility and like the process of like
Mm,
becoming and staying pregnant, and sort of what people refer to as like the queer tax of just how expensive family building can be when you have to
mm,
like source other biological materials. And
right.
because I am asking people across Canada, uh, as I am from Toronto, and I think about everything through a Toronto lens, as we do in Toronto and in Ontario. It's kind of our thing. I'm really hearing the stories of uh, people in more rural places needing to
Mm,
like fly across the country to get access
wow.
to IVF. And so
Wow.
just the limitations and like how much driving people do and how long it takes to find a competent practitioner
Mhm.
for people who are, uh, who've been taking testosterone historically. And
Yes.
uh, that's a really big
Wow.
one of how early it sort of compounds over time.
Mhm.
And the second thing that's coming up a lot is a set of armor that a lot of people talk about wearing going into
Mm,
reproductive spaces as a queer person or as part of a queer family or queer couple, because when there's any sort of relational tension or disconnection,
mhm,
there's this question of like, is it because I'm queer? Is that why this is
mm,
happening right now? And so, an example of that would be
mm,
somebody whose partner was trying to get onto the hospital ward, which was locked, like the birth and labor ward. They had just arrived a little bit later, and being like really grilled by
mm,
the like nursing team, be like, "Who are you? Who are you with?" And questioning like, "Is that because I'm queer, or is that?" Like if I was a dude, if I was a
mm.
dad, would you just be like, sure, come on in, dad?
Right.
And just into feeling into a lot of those like really
Mm,
difficult negative spaces.
mhm.
So it's been I'm thinking a lot right now, but
Yeah.
it's been really interesting.
Hearing some like, yeah, and hearing some of that just makes me think how there are obviously like just so many barriers to to doing this that um yeah, you know, I have not had to consider. And some of it when you're even just talking like finances, like it seems like there's all these barriers and then it's like really skewing like at the end of the day who within that population can even do it, whether it's, flexibility of jobs
Yeah,
or the yeah, financial means or like where they live or
yeah.
um yeah, it seems like it feels unfair is
Yeah,
how
and
it
it's
is.
it's interesting too because in terms of like where community like aligns for support with like other people in reproductive spaces, it feels like a lot of uh queer folks will align with like heterosexual or cis people, heterosexual couples or cis people who are like, yeah, same. I'm also in the fertility world. It's so
Mm,
expensive, like all the medication, like what a process.
yes.
And so there's a lot of connection there. And same with when there is like loss, like early loss or late loss,
Yeah.
like the common experience of like fertility trauma
Mhm.
or loss trauma will bring people sort of together across like sexual orientation and gender lines. So
Mhm.
that's been really interesting too,
Mhm.
versus talking to other queer families who are like, oh, weird that we didn't have that experience, and that can feel like really disconnected. So
Yes.
it's interesting to
Yeah,
see how
where
it's all
people are
coming
finding their
together.
people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just like how big the experience of reproductive trauma,
Mm.
just how lonely it is and how important it is to have somebody else be like, oh my God, same.
Mhm.
Like,
Having someone who can relate.
yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So once you've done all the, like, what do you hope? You said you wanted to kind of look at sort of like a macro level of what this is. Define macro level of what would that be?
So the first part is like interviewing people and like figuring out the themes within what people are experiencing. And then I have a second part where I'm going to be sort of pouring over doing some like document analysis of like the reproductive health policies that we have in
Mhm.
Canada, specifically for queer families or not for queer families, and re-looking at the data together to be like, oh, how does one influence the other? Is there any sort of
Yes.
correlation here? So, again, this is so early, so come back to me in, a year and I would be like, oh, forget everything I said. But uh just the idea of like location where you live in Canada will really
Right.
impact like access to services.
Yeah.
So how does that impact like what it's
Yes.
like to experience pregnancy,
Anything.
like those sort
Yeah.
of things? And so
Yes.
I,
It's I growing up in Southern Ontario, there's certainly grew up with this idea of just universal healthcare. Like, isn't this great? Everybody has access to everything, and
mhm,
grew up in a city where that was like pretty reasonable to believe.
mhm,
It's like, yeah, that makes sense. And then lived in a fairly rural place for a while in Manitoba,
mhm,
um, and started to realize, also happened to be when I was pregnant, and
mhm.
started to realize, oh, actually, this idea of everybody has access
Yeah.
is really determined by where you live for a lot of it.
And you don't know until you don't know.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're like, huh, okay, I don't have access to that specific specialist. I have to drive 4 hours to have access to that kind of specialist.
Yes.
Um, and I was even thinking of this. My mom had a stroke, and again, things that I don't think about that much. That my dad, this big takeaway when I arrived at the hospital to check in on her is he said, I now know we live exactly 7 minutes from the hospital. And I was like, oh, that's so meaningful, actually,
Yes.
to be 7 minutes from a hospital when it's something like a stroke. That is such a big deal
Yes.
versus somebody who's like an hour from a hospital. That's a really
Absolutely.
different projected outcome on the
Mm-hmm.
post-stroke body.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
but I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yes. Until you don't know until you don't know, and you need to know.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mhm.
What sparked your interest in this field? Like you said, 15 years you've been in it. What led you there?
I I think, I mean, my own experience with reproductive trauma and poor perinatal mental health in general.
Hmm.
I was pretty young when I started having children. It's like I'm 20 when my first was born, and it was brutal. The
Mm.
birth was brutal. I was so traumatically open too. Afterwards, 'cause I was the first amongst my friends to have a child, and I would show up at like baby showers and be like, you don't know what's gonna happen. Like it was a nightmare to be around, just like trauma dumping everywhere at somebody's like baby shower to be like, we were gonna play games now. And I'm like, let me tell you what can happen. Um, and it took me I didn't really understand what had sort of happened after that. There was a
Hmm.
lot of like, everyone's alive. So like everyone go home
Right.
and be okay. And
Hmm.
I don't have great memories of what happened during the later stages of the birth, but I do remember my OB looking at my mom and being like, you either need to leave the room or I'm prescribing you lorazepam, and just be like, please stop fighting.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just trying to get this baby out.
Yes. Oh
Um,
my gosh, that must have been, yeah, so much added stress of,
my mom
I
hysterical in the corner.
yes.
Um, but it's really hard. I had no idea what I was doing. I had a really specific image when I was a young single parent of like being more like Gilmore from the Gilmore Girls.
Oh,
It's so
yes.
great. It
Of
was not like that
course.
at all. It was really hard, and I was profoundly depressed. I
Mm.
did not feel like I could talk about that openly because I was
Yeah.
so young and so poor. And
Mhm.
I often
Yeah.
talk about how I went back to school to do my undergrad in um, social science with a stream in like gender and family relations. And like listening to, like, I was taking all these courses on like care work and like mother work and
Mm.
uh just like what is involved
Mhm.
in um trying to like raise children and raise
Mm.
families, and this idea of like, we talk about the economy, but like where do workers come from? Well, they are like raised from,
Yes.
like, they don't just appear out of nowhere. And it gave a bunch of language to my experience that was so therapeutic
Mm.
and so helpful. It was like a weird kind of like bibliotherapy of like seeing my own experience
Mm.
reflected back of
Mhm.
like how we just don't care about parents' experiences. We like often abandon them and leave them with a huge amount of like care work completely on their own, financially,
Yeah.
psychologically, uh, and then uh, the other thing that can happen is like while we're doing that, to be like, okay, you're on your own. When people are struggling with their perinatal mental health, and we're like, the baby, think about the baby, go take care of your perinatal mental health because the baby.
Yes.
And I remember being at
Mm.
a conference around policy and perinatal mental health 2 years ago, and this really brilliant therapist in the GTA named Anushka said, "Yeah, sure, all of that's true, and I really wish someone cared about my mental health before I was a mom because I'm a human." That would have been really great for me to have access to
Mm.
some services rather than, one of the hardest parts of my life
Yeah.
to engage in therapy, being like, you better do this right now or your baby won't be okay. Like, I'm not okay.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that I've just been really interested in that since my eldest has been born.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And not to date you with that, but that was so this was sort of some of the themes you were hearing when you were at school in your undergrad, which was a little while ago.
Yes.
Have you, but then being in the field for a while, like has there been a change?
I think that the culture of parenting has changed in terms of my eldest was born during like two things were happening. This was the baby Einstein era. And so what's happening now with parents and screens was not my experience because there was some discussion around screens, but we were all given videos and be like, put your baby in front of the TV with this baby Einstein video and they'll be a genius. And you're like, okay, amazing. And so neither of my kids were really into screens. I tried to train them to like watch TV because they were like, no, thanks.
Yes,
I
I remember those. As you're saying that, I have this vague recollection of like a DVD cover of Baby Einstein.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was just like Mozart and like cymbals,
Yes.
like lava lamps. It was like a really weird video. But that was really big during that time.
Okay.
And then the other thing they had in Ontario was it was a campaign called The Years Before Five Last the Rest of Their Lives, which was like the most terrifying public health campaign
Mm.
uh, that was just really shame-based, to be like, if you don't get this right, if you
Right.
don't like stare into your baby's eyes and talk to them nonstop and show them all these baby Einstein videos, like you can't recover. You have 5 years. You don't get it right now, you're done.
Yes.
And so I was
Mm.
really impacted by that because I didn't have access to a lot of resources at that time.
Mm.
And so I would sort of vacillate between like, oh my God, it's like we're there's no coming back. Like I just can't, I can't do this in the next
Yes.
5 years. And then trying really, really, really hard to be like, okay, stare in the baby's eyes, stare in the baby's eyes.
Yes.
And it was
Mm.
just brutal. Um, and so I would say that a lot of the themes around like guilt and shame and parenting are the same, but the rules have changed
Mm.
because now I think the things that parents are dealing with are different, and definitely different post-COVID in terms
Right.
of
Mm.
what people are trying to navigate in terms of
Mm.
what it means to be a good parent.
Mhm.
And I often sort of talk about that now we have these narratives around parenting that like it's not kind of cool to be trying really hard to like be a super parent. You kind of have to like be like, oh yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? Like all the pressures around parenting. And so we have
Yes.
things like Working Moms and all these shows that like sort of like make fun of the pressures that parents are under. But then like secretly when we're alone, we're like, oh my God, this is so hard. I really want to get it right. I really want to do right by my kids.
Yes, I am under so much pressure.
I'm under
Yes.
so much pressure.
Yes.
And so I often liken it to like how people sort of conceptualize their bodies, that like particularly women and like femme bodies, that like we know the beauty standards are like impossible and
Mm.
ridiculous. But like when I'm shopping for a bathing suit, my politics go right out the window and I'm like right in the experience of like, oh no.
Right.
And it feels a lot like that in parenting, that like we're
Mm.
working so hard and we can see that it's impossible.
Right.
And it's really hard to be a parent. I
Mhm.
don't know anyone who's not feeling really burnt out,
Mhm.
and that feels really different. I
Mhm.
think there was a time where people were less burnt out, but
Right.
there's a lot of either solo income parents trying to afford. I don't
Afford
know how
life.
any of us
Yes.
afford life,
Yes.
but most people either have to work or have like in a double income
Mhm.
two-parent family, like everybody has to work.
Mhm.
And we take this system we created that like assumes
Mhm.
there's like one person at home doing all the care work and
Totally.
one person making money, and off you go, like go live your life. And we're like, okay, everybody make money, as much money as possible. Not enough, because it's going to be $80 billion to live anywhere in the entire country.
Yeah.
And all that care work, just like cram it in on the weekends.
Yes.
And it's kind of awful.
Yes, and it comes with this assumption that there's somewhere for your children to be when you are at work. Because I mean, certainly Perry's Hound, right? Like
Yeah.
they're like good luck finding daycare, right? And I know it's not just a
Yeah.
here thing, it's a lot of places thing. But so then there are people who, yes, have had a baby, are ready, interested, had prepared to go back to work,
Mhm.
and then are faced with this like, oh, actually though, I can't. But like society, there's this idea that I'm supposed to, and I have like a timeline on maternity leave or parental leave or
Yeah.
whatever it is. But then there's nowhere to be, or this idea of, jobs are 9 to 5, but school is 9 to 3.
Who
And
designed that? Like, really? Who designed that?
it's the shortest day ever.
Shortest day
It's
ever.
Yeah, none of it. And then summers, like so
Yes.
yeah, no, it's really hard to enjoy your kids, but then there's also somewhat of an inconvenience of
Yes.
just their schedule not meeting your schedule. And
Yeah.
yeah, but then you have to somehow make it all work.
And
Yeah.
then, so let's imagine, first of all, like, oh, okay, I can find childcare, thank God. Is it affordable? Oh, weird. It costs more than like how much I'm making in my job. And as you said,
Yes.
9 to 5. But what if you don't work 9 to 5? What if you work nights at a hospital? Who's watching your children then?
Yes. Totally. Shift work, or
Brutal.
it is brutal. I know. It's really, yeah, it's really hard. And it's interesting, like we're talking now, second week of school. I don't know when
Mm-hmm.
this will like
Yeah.
air or whatever, but and yeah, the transitions there for parents and like how that goes. And
Yeah.
I remember like very well the perceived judgment um of my child had a really hard time starting JK, and the like what those drop-offs looked like
Mm-hmm.
compared with other drop-offs that seemed seamless, and they would just wave goodbye and off they would go.
Yeah.
And you have the crying child who's hugging your leg, and then what do you do with that? And um yeah, I think it just like exists ever of these things that we're told make sense or are supposed to look a certain way, and then when they fall outside of that, what do you do with that? It's really, really hard.
I know. And then there's your own internal experience, and then there's all the commentary.
Mm-hmm.
all the commentary. And even
Mm-hmm.
when it's well-meaning commentary, um, even when we invite the commentary or the advice, it's still so hard to figure out what to do with it all. That you're like,
Yep.
we sort of take it and receive it, and you're like, what of this do I want to keep? What of this do I not need to keep?
Mm-hmm.
And I really am
Mm-hmm.
an advocate for the idea of like, we are the expert on our own children. And so we might look to resources in terms of like what's really common and like
Yeah.
what are other people's experiences and like uh, explore like that way. I think we always in community have like looked for like other stories and been
Mm-hmm.
like, am I doing okay? I think usually that's the question, like, am I doing okay? Am I doing this
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um, but there's been such a rise of what I call like expert-based parenting to be like, what does
Mm-hmm.
the book say? I better do what this book says. And
Yes.
always
And
just
there's
like,
a lot of that right now.
goodness.
Yes.
And just always being like, "Mhm." So books are looking at things like research is going to look at things like averages.
Right.
And let's remember there's a lot of like observatory data in that. And let's remember that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this research, particularly from like early days research on parenting experts, I was like, were done by like dudes who've never cared for a child a day in their life. And
Right.
so like
Right.
let's hold all of those pieces together so that you can like
Yes.
figure out what you want to do with it, like take what you need and like hold it with
Yes.
a lot of grace and space. um but I think as a lot
Mm.
of us are like, I don't know what I'm doing, this is really hard, we want to feel affirmed in our choices
Mm-hmm.
by being like, well, this doctor said that I should do this.
Yes.
But over and over again in the work I've done with clients, realizing that like, oh, I did what it said to do in the book, and it's not working. And I'm like, yeah, that's not that weird. Particularly for new
Yes.
parents around things like sleep.
Oh my gosh. As you were saying that, I was thinking of sleep and the desperation. I think that comes of just, yes, you want to feel like you're doing a good job. Like you've got this like
Yeah.
tiny little thing that you are responsible for,
Yeah.
and you have no idea what to do with them, and you just want it to go okay. And so just this grasping at anything to
Yeah.
give ideas or say this is what and I
Yeah.
think some of it too is that like conflict, or maybe not confliction, but the um pause of generational advice too,
Mm-hmm.
of that this idea of like, well, but that's how you did it,
Mm-hmm.
and like things have changed.
Yes.
um which like I don't know whether that like gives disservice to experience or yeah, a different way. I don't know what you think.
I don't know. I think a lot about some of the like generational pieces of uh like what our parents' generation, like whatever was sort of like in vogue and on trend.
Mm.
Um, I think about like during their parenting experience again with like what they were told by like parenting
Mm-hmm.
experts. Because I know as a child of the 80s, what was really in then was like self-esteem. So it was a lot of like,
Mm-hmm.
everybody gets a participation
Oh,
ribbon.
yes.
There are no winners. Everyone's a winner. And like, sure, fine. Like I'm sure there's like value in like those pieces. But like we've sort of shifted away from that now. That was a
Mm-hmm.
really long time ago in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
what's like in vogue. And now there's a lot of discussion around like connection and attachment and like
Mm-hmm.
emotional regulation. These were not words that were being used in like 1989.
No.
And then when we become parents and I mean, obviously it depends on the sort of relationship we have with our own caregivers growing up. And we go to our caregivers and say, like, how do I do this? They're going to give us the advice they were given,
Mm-hmm.
unless they're somehow keeping up with all the parenting trends. And it can then be weird and conflictual.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we talked before this podcast around like, uh, my mom, who like again when I was a baby, it was all like you put your baby to sleep. What's safe
Mm-hmm.
is on their tummies.
Yes.
And then I was like, no, the doctor said I'm supposed to put the baby to sleep on their back. And my mom being like just so
Yeah.
unsafe.
Yes.
But like
Yeah.
things change. But we hold our parents to whatever parenting expectations like we are parenting in.
Yes.
And it's just a really clunky place for a lot of us to navigate if we don't have mm, good relational dynamics. Even when we do have good relational dynamics, you're
It,
like, don't tell me how to put my baby to sleep.
yeah, it's so, and I'm like, I find it fascinating that they just like thinking about like different generations and how, um, culturally what, was happening then. Or, I think of like my parents and how different it was for them. I'm an 80s baby too, and versus like when I had mine. But then for them, like my grandparents were born in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And so, their parenting of my parents
Yeah.
was very different than like my parents would have parented me. But
Yeah.
like all these different, just shifting,
Yeah.
shifting change. I don't know.
And if I were to think of it through a positive lens, like we're all just trying to like do a little bit better. And so we think about
Mhm.
parenting through the depression. You're like, you had food and clothes. Not everybody did. Okay. You're welcome.
Yes.
And then the next generation is like, food and clothes wasn't like quite enough though. How about all these activities for my kids? How about we work on your self-esteem? And then we're like, thanks for like the self-esteem and the activities. But you did not take care of my emotional regulation. And now I have anxiety. And then, so now we're like, okay, how do I like support my kids in this? And I
Mhm.
wonder what the next generation will, I wonder what they'll hold
I
us
know.
to. And we'll be so mad about it because
It'll,
we're like, but I gave you all the emotional regulations too. That's what I was told to do.
I watched Inside Out like 10 times with you.
I learned internal family systems therapy. I went to my own therapy. Yeah. And they'll be like, you know what you didn't do? Like, that's right.
I did
So
the
sorry.
work. I thought. Being a young person can be tough. Raising a young person can be tough. Whether it's school stress, family dynamics, or navigating challenging emotions, everyone needs the right support. That's where Sound Youth Counseling comes in. We specialize in helping children ages 4 and up through individual, parent, and family counseling tailored to meet each person's unique needs. From tackling tough issues at home or school to providing customized workshops and professional development for teachers and community leaders, we're here to make a difference. At Sound Youth Counseling, we believe young people deserve a safe, welcoming, and accepting space to grow and thrive, and every family deserves the tools to support them. If you're looking for support, visit soundyouthcounseling.ca and see how we can help. Sound Youth Counseling, empowering individuals, supporting families, and building stronger communities. Well, okay, so you mentioned therapy. Let's go into this. Not that it's therapy per se, but you do work in training therapists or just training non-therapists too, but Canadian perinatal mental health trainings
That's right.
has become like quite a force. No, it has. Like it is known and like very credentialed in the training that it offers for people. And you started it.
I did. I want to give a shout out to my OG business partner, Natalie Grimpus. Um, yeah, we started it. We had not intended actually for it to be an online training. The sort of precipice for this is that I was at a perinatal mental health training years ago, and it had sort of like just come to Canada, and it was like fine. And I'm not, I mean, I don't have a lot of negative things to say about the training. It was good information. But the best part of the training was being with a bunch of other perinatal mental health professionals and like listening to the work that they were doing and realizing that I feel very strongly we have amazing practitioners in Canada, like amazing practitioners, like brilliant, brilliant minds and brilliant work. And I was like, we should just like get together and learn from each other. Like, why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah.
And also to make like more about Canadian material because
Yeah.
the reproductive space in the States is real different. The healthcare in the
Okay.
States is real different.
And is that where it was kind of coming from before this?
Yeah. And so like less around talking around things like billing and like billing codes and being able to like diagnose because that's important for how like private insurance works.
Right.
And more around what does like access to rural services
Different landscape.
look like? What does it look like to like have OHIP versus private? Like there's I mean I'm talking about Ontario. And so that was the original precipice for this. So it was training put together, and then we started with one, just perinatal mental health, and COVID hit. So we pivoted really
This
quickly
is when this. Okay. Yes.
to being online, and we had sort of 3 core programs to start. We had perinatal mental health certificate, birth and reproductive trauma certificate, and then with Chantel McAbey, we developed a perinatal grief and loss. We have many more programs now, and we just sort of ran those for a bit. And I often talk about how I was like, oh, this business really wanted to exist because it
Okay.
did really take off, and there's an amazing team there now. And Natalie stepped away on like very good terms. Like I love Natalie very much.
Mhm.
And I have like two other people that I co-own with now,
Okay.
Annika Vanderberg and Natasha Marchand, and they are running the show. I got to tell you, I have taken a big step back to get this PhD done.
Yeah.
So it's like a really lovely team, and
Mm.
they Natasha and Annika are doing a ton of community development, and it's just really lovely to bring again together these like
Mm.
amazing practitioners across
Yes.
Canada and see what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
And the coolest part, I think, of like the work that's happening with CPMHT is seeing how people apply it within their own communities.
Mm.
And so it's not that the information is necessarily revolutionary around this is what perinatal distress looks like, and
Okay.
here's different ways to like show up and support people. What has been so interesting is that because we are interdisciplinary. So it is therapists, social workers, psychotherapists, clinical psychologists, but nurses and midwives and OBs and doulas and
Yes.
ECE, like early childhood workers, that what I've learned is that what it looks like to receive support in the perinatal period for mental health varies wildly
Hmm.
across Canada. And if we think for 1 second that everybody is going to be have a family doctor, go to their family doctor, get screened, get put into a program, be offered medication, and that is the approach that is going to be like leveraged across Canada, we are so profoundly wrong, because there are people doing incredible work within their communities, and being able to access other professionals was often just the thing they needed, because people would be like, I have this idea for a peer support program, and like,
Right.
and then they'll go back, and all of a sudden there's this like amazing peer support program in like
That's very
rural
cool.
BC,
Yes.
where parents are like taking care of each other
Hmm.
and are trying to support each other, being like, I don't really know what to do, but like I'm gonna bring food and I'm gonna watch a baby, and I can do that.
Yes.
And so how it gets uh, what people want in terms of like support for their mental health
Mhm.
just varies really widely, and I would never have known.
Right.
And how people respond to that in community, I would never have known. Because again, I'm from
Yes.
Toronto and I'm from Ontario, and we just think about ourselves and our many
The
hospitals.
center of everything.
Center of everything.
But it's such a good point though too, right? It's like, yeah, it's okay. Not everyone has access to, let's say, a doctor or everything, but at the same time, we all have access to community of some
Hopefully,
kind. Hope
yeah.
we like live somewhere, hopefully.
Yes.
And so if there's strength, then if it's strengthening community networks, or that idea of
Yeah.
like, people might need perinatal or perinatal mental health support,
Yeah.
but maybe they all want it differently.
Yes.
Like that's pretty cool that it's
Yeah.
kind of increasing just access to variety of things. Like that's amazing.
Totally. And what
Yeah.
different parenting populations want too might vary
Mm.
really widely in terms of
Yes.
um yeah, just what support looks like, or who you want support from, or who you don't want support from.
Yes.
Um, so
Mm.
it's really neat. It's really neat.
You mentioned just how like the spectrum of people who take these.
Hmm.
So if someone was interested in learning more about it but isn't sure like if they qualify, to take it, who can take a training with you?
Anyone can take
Okay.
training with us. The only training that I believe has professional credentials
Yeah.
related to it is the Flash program, because it's a trauma reprocessing modality, and the larger structures and organizations have like they don't just want anybody doing trauma reprocessing, so you
Right.
have to have to be working as a therapist in some way, or be in school to
Yeah.
become a therapist. But other than that, they are open access, and
Okay.
uh, we do a lot of interdisciplinary stuff.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the tools that we would be sharing usually are um, like for specific sort of like client work, are for like for anyone. So
Okay.
if you are like running a peer group, it's okay. Like in the same way, like we can talk about like different parts if I use like, therapy language.
Yeah.
So we aren't like teaching people how to do therapy, but just
Right.
how to like show up and offer different like frameworks and different ways to think about
Yes.
psychoeducation and think about parenting and like listening and
Mm-hmm.
all those different pieces. And then when people do, they can just come and do the training. Some people go on to do a full certification. That's where we differentiate between like mental health professionals
Okay.
and community
Yep.
professionals.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Okay.
hmm
So there's a huge potential there for building community capacity.
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and taking things back to figure out how you want to, like we really try to support people and like how do you want to use this information if
Mm-hmm.
it's not if they're not clear yet around how they want to use it.
Yes. Yeah. Or if they just want to like network or engage or learn more, because I've seen like book clubs,
Yes.
right? Like all these just engagement pieces of bringing people together to
hmm
share and talk and
hmm
yeah.
Yeah, and so we also do a ton of like free community-based programming, like the book club. We have up here like the book club meets. I don't think it's once every month, but it's a cool book club. Annika and Natasha run it. Annika's really the lead, and rather than like you must read this book, there'll be like a theme around
Okay.
like choose a book on parenting, like not by a like cis white author, and like or choose a book around parenting and mental health, and then we'll all come together and talk about what we read, and
Oh,
sort
interesting.
of like
So it's not
do that
everybody's going to
thing.
read this book and then
There's a list to like get you started to be like, okay,
sure.
let's read some books by like parents with disabilities and like come together and talk about those themes or
Right.
like infertility and like and so it's a really cool book club.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have uh, the listening circle, which Annika runs, which is a place to come together and to differentiate between our like peer consultation, which is around like, hey, I've got a case
Oh
I
yeah.
want to talk
Okay.
about.
Yep.
But people were like, I don't have a case, but I do just want to like be with other perinatal
Mm.
professionals. And so it's a place to go and just talk about, guys, I'm trying to run this group and I can't seem to get people to come out to the group. What are other people
Okay.
doing? Or man, so many people are talking about this right now in sessions that we're in
Yeah.
community groups. Like anybody else seeing that? And then we have our peer consultation, which is for people to bring like, ooh, I got a tough case.
Right. What do I do?
What do I do?
Yep.
So we've got a bunch of different pieces like
Very
that.
cool. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So so you've done some trainings on that side, you're doing this research. If you were able to go and like make some policy change, either provincially, nationally, federally, and say, this would just be the like, if we just did this policy change, this could be the catalyst to just like filter out. Is there anything that's on your like hot button list of like, I would just change this because this one's really bothering me right now?
That's such a good question. And I think my answer might be a little bit boring, which is literally just funding.
Mm,
Because again, I really believe in the healthcare practitioners, mental health, beyond mental health, community health, peer support. I really believe in like people's ability to, if they had money and resources,
yeah.
what they would do. And I know that's really
Okay.
complicated, but specifically when it comes to mental health, there's and now I'm going to get really boring and academic. Like there was a report done years ago
Mhm.
by called the Romano Report, which sort of like did an assessment of what was happening in healthcare in Canada. All of this to say, the guy who wrote the report um, has this amazing quote, which is that like mental health is the like orphaned child of like the
Mm.
Canadian healthcare system, like just so completely abandoned in terms of like
Mhm.
thoughtful policy, variations of like options of what people can access, and
Yeah.
just like uh, money, like
Yes.
you know. The idea that like being able to access not just therapy and not just hospitalization and medication, but like couples therapy, family
Yes.
therapy, like stuff that is like wildly expensive. And I know because I know what my rate is.
Mhm.
And just the assumption that people have private insurance, it would be giving people access to really good high quality therapy and not just like a clinical assignment of like, congratulations, here's your therapist, you get 6 sessions of CBT, all the best to you,
Yes.
but being able
Yes.
to choose and be connected to a therapist that like you
Mhm.
really could do some good work with,
Mhm.
having space and option in there,
Yes.
that would be my big one.
I would love to see that. And power
I
of
know.
choice,
Yes.
of just on so many levels. That would be so significant.
So
Yes.
significant. Choice in your modality, choice in who you
Yes.
work with, choice in like how you receive services.
Yes. Where you go, how
Yeah.
often, like what client. Yes. All
Mhm.
of it.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So that would probably be my big
Okay.
one.
Funding.
I've also heard other people who do like hospital billing, or like in
Mhm.
Ontario OHIP billing, that they're like almost every problem that you run into with like frustration with like
Mm.
trying to find a family doctor, booking with your family doctor is
Yeah.
like it's a billing funding thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, almost
Hmm.
y'all.
I-
Yeah.
Well, maybe, your research, this like thesis is gonna come. Who knows, right? Um, one of the things I'm always curious about with this podcast
Hmm.
is this idea of, you have sort of been carving your own path of, well, you have, of like where, what interests you and kind of like where you go with it, and what's been missing um in the perinatal mental health space.
Hmm.
And I think with that, I'm always curious, like, what your experiences were, or if there was a time when you're like, yeah, I think I just realized then that I see things differently, or it was like maybe this experience that gave me the confidence to like go do something different.
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
I think there's just like a touch of delusion of like, I don't know, I think of like Mindy Kaling's book, like, Why Not Me? So I've got a
Mm,
bit of like, I don't know, why not me? But I often talk about just like, I just talk a lot and think a lot. I talk a lot out loud, and just uh, the experience of being really curious around my own experience and the experiences of those around me, and just asking questions around like, why is it like this?
mm,
What's going on? It's not just me. And one of the things that sort of propelled me into the idea of um, thinking about like parenting messages and what it does to our
mhm,
perinatal mental health, our mental health in general, was my um, uh, I did my first graduate degrees in sociology, and I was doing work and research around mothers in the prison system. And it was so, I mean, two things. I mean, that was really interesting research. The first is I was doing a comparison between a prison that I don't think exists anymore out in Alouette, BC, that was a sort of took the approach of that women who become involved in the criminal justice system, and I've done a lot about my feelings around policing in the criminal justice system, but I will set that aside. That there's a trauma story there, and so that trauma story matters, and we need to like think about that through like these like
mm.
lenses of like social control. And so they had like a mother and baby component within the prison system. So
Okay.
even if people were incarcerated while pregnant, they got to keep their baby. All the mothers got to like parent in a like particular part of like the prison.
Mhm.
And what's so interesting too about that is the mothers in that, their postpartums, the way they talked about it was so interesting. They were like, it was great because they weren't cooking meals. They
Mhm.
weren't like, and I do not want to glorify incarcerated mothering at all. I really want to be clear about that. But they parented in community, and they supported each other.
Yes.
And they didn't have a lot of like reproductive labor outside of just like hanging out with each other and their babies. And in this one study that I did,
Mhm.
they talked really positively about that experience compared to a prison in Ontario that was like did not take that like trauma informed lens. And
Okay.
uh but the experience that was really sort of common for a lot of people that I spoke to was uh how they worked through their internal identity of like feeling like a good mom or feeling like a bad mom. But there was just so much thoughtfulness around what it meant for them if there had been a prolonged period of separation from their children, and
Mhm.
then a coming back, which not everybody came back into a relationship.
Mhm.
And even if they did it, they didn't necessarily come back into a day-to-day caring relationship. And then when I did my like MSW and was working with parents and mothers not doing the prison system.
Yeah.
Uh, the experience was so similar
Hmm.
of like working through issues of like, how do I do this well? And I want to be good and I'm
Yes.
not good enough, and guilt and guilt and guilt and shame and shame and shame. I was so fascinated by that. And so, in my own experience of being like a young mom, at least like never enough, never
Yeah.
doing good enough. And I was like, oh, there's something happening here
Mm-hmm.
that it seems to be like really, uh, it just like, it doesn't matter what your entry point or like the experience of like motherhood is. Everybody feels like they're doing a bad job. And so that was a big piece for me
Mm-hmm.
around thinking about parenting and what we tell parents around like who gets to be good and how to be good,
Yes. And who
and
gets to decide?
who gets to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And like, god damn, if like the person who gets to decide that was some dude like pediatrician from 1945, like why did he get to decide that?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's those are the things I was thinking about a lot, talking about a
Mm.
lot. And as I talked about it, people were like, I also am curious about that actually. Can I
Yeah.
talk about that too? And I'm like, yeah, come talk about it. There's a lot going on in this world. And that's sort of what sort of prompted all of this,
Yeah.
these pieces.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing and the space you're carving out for this, because I think it's really important. And I think there's like pieces that we're missing. And so we need we need people speaking about those pieces that are missing. Yeah.
And I think that the next generation of parents with like really young kids are just so done. And I'm going to be really curious to see what this generation does in terms of just not wanting to parent under these sorts of pressures, not
Mm-hmm.
wanting to parent under like everybody's working 60 hours a week and like
Yes.
there isn't quite enough for everybody, and like
Yes.
everyone's just exhausted and burnt out and dysregulated all the time. People are like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, good luck to you, next generation. Good luck. Let us know how it goes. You're doing a good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Once we throw in the towel, then it's like yeah,
Yeah.
we will no longer. Yeah.
Like they're figuring something out for us that like or at least I couldn't figure it out. But
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks for figuring that out. But I will say the last person to say around that actually is
Mhm.
that I find uh outside this other sort of I don't think this is my idea, it's just something I've been thinking about around when we're trying to do intergenerational change of any
Mm.
kind, so working through intergenerational trauma or working with like intergenerational healing, but specifically some of the trauma pieces. I'm like, oh my god, you don't have to do all of it in one generation.
Mm.
That like sometimes we just like pick up our own piece of that. And I can tell a story of my nanny on my dad's side was, she really struggled with her mental health, profoundly anxious, like at the end of her life, like agoraphobic, didn't leave the house. And she didn't have a lot of access to resources or like do a lot to challenge that.
Yeah.
And then like what that looked like in my dad, who like we all were all just like anxious messes, with like a million intrusive thoughts all the time, and how he like worked with that and like fought that and was like, okay, I've seen what this looks like. If like nobody is pushing back, I'm gonna push back. Was it perfect? No. Was it better? Yeah. And then what was given to me, also an anxious mess, and like how I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the next piece here around like not just like fighting the anxiety, but like trying to like heal it and move forward. And then with my own children, I'm like, yeah, you also think endlessly with intrusive thoughts around like existential thoughts. Like that's what we all do. And so
Yes.
like you got to pick up the next piece, but like
Mm.
it's not that just one person like
Mm-hmm.
shed us of this like debilitating existential anxiety.
Mm-hmm. I
And
love that idea. Just
yeah,
like we each pick a piece and
yeah.
then it just slowly shifts. Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend who uh we were talking about this in terms of like we both had like hardcore, I call them like Weight Watchers moms, like, and they do not, they have no shame around like there's nothing around body positivity, neutrality. They're just like weight loss, weight loss, weight loss for everything, and just like diet, diet, diet. Like, oh dear, here I'm blowing my diet. How dare I eat dessert? And and then like what happened to like our generation, where now we're like, okay, so I grew up with all of those messages, but now I'm trying to do something with my own kids around body neutrality and like food neutrality. And it's really hard because I didn't grow up in that. And I'm like, if all we can do is gift our children like the idea that like we don't need to like live in a world where we like police our food and police our bodies all the time, if we don't get to body love, like could that be enough from what we came from? Could it be enough? And then we'll let our children pick up the next pieces and take it from there.
Yes.
I think we need to let ourselves off the hook.
Cannot do it all.
We cannot do it all in one
Cannot do
generation.
it all, and we have to stop
Oh my
trying.
God.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are some of the things I'm thinking about right now.
Well, maybe you can come back and share other things you're thinking about later.
I will so
Yes.
happily do that. I will so happily do that. So I will, to be continued.
To be continued. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening to Exception Seekers. Tune in again as we continue to seek overlooked stories that offer new perspectives, disrupt limiting beliefs, and inspire transformative approaches to nurturing youth mental health.
This podcast was produced by North Star Networks, the guiding light for progressive media.